My dear friends, have you ever noticed that the strongest women are often the ones who've cried silently when no one was watching, the women who smiled even when life tried to break them, and who whispered to God in the middle of the night, "I don't know how, but I trust you." You see, trust in God doesn't mean life becomes easy. It means you stop fighting with the direction of the wind and start learning to sail with it. There's a beautiful saying, "When you can't trace his hand, trust his heart." A woman who trusts God may not always have a plan, but she walks with peace. Her calmness is her crown, her faith is her fragrance, and her resilience is her silent sermon. Let me tell you a small story. Once, a young woman came to me, her eyes filled with tears. She said, "Guruji, I've prayed for years for something, and still nothing happens. Has God forgotten me?" I smiled and said, "My child, God's delay is not God's denial. Sometimes He hides His blessings behind waiting, because He's preparing you for what you're praying for." She looked at me confused. So I asked her, "If I gave you raw rice, would you eat it?" She said, "No, Guruji, it's not ready." Exactly, but God is cooking your blessing, but until it's ready, He won't serve it to you. When a woman trusts God, she doesn't panic in the process. She prays, she prepares, she persists, because she knows, even if the world says no, God's yes is powerful enough to open doors no one can shut. Sometimes life will test your faith. People will misunderstand you. Situations will shake you. But remember, when life gets blurry, adjust your focus not on people, but on God. There's a reason He closed that door. Maybe He saw something you couldn't. Maybe He's protecting you from something you thought you wanted. Faith is not about understanding everything. It's about trusting even when nothing makes sense. I often say, faith is not believing that God will do what you want. It's believing that God will do what's right. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever seen a seed struggle under the soil? It's dark, it's lonely, it's silent. But inside, something sacred is happening. Roots are forming, strength is building. And one day, the seed breaks the ground and meets the sunlight. That's exactly what happens to women who trust God in their dark seasons. You may not see progress, but your roots are growing. And when God decides the time is right, you'll bloom, not because you forced it, but because you trusted Him. The world teaches women to be independent. And yes, that's important, but spiritual growth teaches you something deeper, to be God dependent. Because true strength is not in saying, "I can do it all," but in saying, "With God, I can do all things." Every woman who walks with faith carries an unseen glow. She doesn't compete, she completes. She doesn't chase, she attracts peace. She doesn't seek attention, she radiates contentment. So, if you are in a season of confusion, heartbreak, or silence, don't lose heart. God's silence is not absence. It's preparation. He is aligning people, opportunities, and miracles behind the scenes. You may not see the path, but He's making a way where there seems to be none. And someday, when you look back, you'll smile and say, "Now I understand why He made me wait." Because when a woman trusts God, she doesn't just survive, she transforms. Her patience becomes her power, her prayer becomes her protection, and her peace becomes her biggest proof that God's hand is truly upon her life. So today, if your heart is heavy, whisper this prayer: faith over fear. Such a small phrase, yet it carries the power to transform an entire life. In every woman's journey, there comes a moment when she stands at a crossroad. One path filled with fear, and the other lined with faith. And in that moment, she must choose. Fear will always whisper reasons to give up, but faith will always whisper, try once more. It is that soft, steady voice that pushes you to rise even when life has pushed you down countless times. You see, fear is natural. Everyone feels it. Fear tells you that you are not enough, that the mountain ahead is too high, that the pain is too heavy. But faith tells you that even if the mountain seems impossible, the one who walks with you made the mountain himself. And that realization changes everything, because when you have faith, you stop seeing life as a punishment and start seeing it as preparation. I once met a young woman who had lost her job. She was talented, hardworking, and responsible, yet suddenly everything fell apart. She sat across from me and said, "Guruji, I'm scared. I don't know how I'll manage. I feel lost." I smiled and told her, "Don't worry about the door that closed. God doesn't shut one unless He's ready to open another one that leads you higher." Months later, she found a new job, not just any job, but one that aligned with her passion, her purpose, her peace. She came back with tears of gratitude and said, "No, I understand. I had to lose something good to find something better." That is what faith over fear looks like in real life. Believing that something unseen is working for your good, even when you cannot see it yet. Faith is not a feeling, it's a decision. It's waking up each morning and saying, "I will not let my fear decide my future. Life will not always go as planned. There will be days when your confidence breaks, when people misunderstand you, when everything you believed in falls apart. But faith is what gives you the strength to breathe again, to take one small step, even when you cannot see the whole staircase." Think about how a bird builds her nest. She collects tiny twigs, one by one, never knowing if a storm will come tomorrow. She does it anyway, not because she trusts the branch, but because she trusts her wings. That's faith. A woman who trusts God doesn't depend on circumstances to stay strong. Her strength comes from the quiet, knowing that she is guided, protected, and loved by something greater than her fears. Fear makes you look at how big the problem is. Faith makes you look at how big your God is. When you face challenges, health issues, financial troubles, heartbreaks, loneliness, fear will tell you it's over. But faith reminds you that the story is still being written. Every setback can become a setup for a comeback if you choose to believe. Many times, life doesn't give us explanations. You may not understand why something ended, why someone left, or why certain dreams didn't work out. But faith whispers, "Keep going, one day this will make sense." It's in those dark, uncertain nights that faith truly shines. Because faith doesn't remove your pain, it gives it purpose. It doesn't take away your tears, it gives them meaning. There's a beautiful example in nature. When a caterpillar enters a cocoon, it probably feels trapped, suffocated, and uncertain. But that same stillness, that same darkness, is where transformation begins. If you open the cocoon too early, the butterfly will never fly. Sometimes God places you in a situation not to punish you, but to strengthen your wings. The waiting season, the silent phase, the unanswered prayers, these are the places where faith grows. I've seen so many women lose themselves in fear. Fear of being alone, fear of failure, fear of what others will say. And yet, the moment they start trusting God and themselves, their entire life begins to change. Because faith is not about controlling the outcome, it's about trusting the process. When you walk in faith, you don't need to see the destination, you only need to take the next step. One of the most powerful things a woman can say is, I don't know how, but I believe something good is coming. That belief shifts your energy, your mindset, and your reality. When you move from fear to faith, you stop living as a victim of circumstances and start living as a vessel of purpose. You begin to notice that what was once heavy now feels lighter, not because the problem changed, but because you did. Faith is not about being fearless, it's about being courageous despite fear. Even the strongest women feel scared. They just don't let fear make their decisions. They choose to pray instead of panic. They choose to trust instead of doubt. They choose to move forward instead of freezing in place. So, my dear friend, whatever you are facing today, whether it's uncertainty in your career, a broken relationship, or a silent prayer that seems unanswered, choose faith. Remind yourself that God has never failed you before, and He won't start now. When fear says, what if you fall? Faith says, what if you fly? Life will always test you. Sometimes you will walk through fire, sometimes through storm, sometimes through silence. But every time you choose faith over fear, you rise stronger, wiser, and more peaceful than before. Because faith doesn't just change your situation, it changes you. And that change is the greatest blessing of all. God's delay is not God's denial. These are words that can soothe a restless heart and bring peace to a worried soul. In our fast-paced world, where everything is instant, messages, deliveries, results, waiting feels like punishment. But in the divine rhythm of life, waiting is not wasted time. It is sacred time. It is the season when God is not only preparing your blessings, but also preparing you for them. There are moments in life when we pray and nothing happens. We hope, we cry, and yet silence echoes louder than our words. We begin to wonder, has God forgotten me? But remember, a farmer does not harvest the same day he plants the seed. He waters it, nurtures it, and waits patiently. The delay is not failure, it's part of the process. God works the same way. Sometimes He withholds certain things, not because you don't deserve them, but because you're not ready for them yet. I remember once meeting a woman who had been praying for years to find a life partner. She was intelligent, kind, and deeply spiritual. Every year she would say, maybe this year, Guruji, God will send someone. And every year she faced disappointment. One day she asked me, why is God not listening? I said, He is listening. But sometimes, before He brings someone into your life, He strengthens the relationship you have with yourself. Months later, she smiled and told me, I finally understand. I needed to love myself before I could love anyone else. Later, she met someone who truly valued her. The wait made her wiser, not weaker. That's the beauty of God's timing. It never comes early, never too late, always right when it should. When we face delay, our mind often fills with fear. We start comparing ourselves to others. She got married already. He got promoted. They bought a house. But what we fail to see is that everyone's clock is set differently. God doesn't follow your schedule, He follows your growth. And if He is making you wait, it's because there's something in that waiting period that will build your strength, your patience, your faith. Think of a fruit that ripens before its time. It may look good on the outside, but it tastes bitter within. Similarly, premature blessings may look attractive, but might harm us if we're not ready to handle them. God delays because He loves you enough not to give you something that could destroy you. He wants to bless you completely, not partially. Imagine a child asking his mother for firecrackers. The mother knows they are dangerous, but the child insists. The mother says, "Not now." The child cries, feels hurt, even thinks the mother is being unfair, but the mother's no is not rejection, it's protection. In the same way, when God says, "Not now," He's not being cruel, He's being careful. There's another story that beautifully illustrates this. A man prayed for years to get a certain job. He was qualified, hardworking, and faithful, yet every interview ended with rejection. Frustrated, he said to me, "Guruji, I think God has forgotten me." I told him, "No, my friend. He is saving you from something you cannot yet see." Months later, the company he had been chasing collapsed. Had he gotten that job, he would have been lost too. Later, he found another opportunity that was stable and meaningful. He realized that God's delay had been His protection all along. The truth is, when we are waiting, we see only one page of the story, but God sees the entire book. We focus on the moment, He focuses on eternity. We want what is comfortable, He gives what is best. And sometimes, the delay is the blessing itself. Because in that waiting, we learn patience, humility, and resilience. We learn to trust, not in outcomes, but in the one who controls them. I often say that waiting is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of faith. To wait without giving up means to trust God's wisdom more than your own desires. And that kind of trust builds a beautiful peace inside you. You stop forcing things. You stop begging for answers. You start believing that if something is truly meant for you, it will never pass you by. Let's look at nature again. The moon doesn't rush to shine, it waits for its night. The flower doesn't bloom all at once. It opens slowly, petal by petal. The butterfly doesn't emerge in an hour. It stays inside the cocoon until transformation is complete. Everything in nature waits, and when it appears, it's perfect. So why do we think our lives should be any different? Many times, when life slows down, we think it's a setback. But what if it's a setup for something greater? What if the job you didn't get was making space for a better one? What if the relationship that ended was clearing the path for peace? What if the door that closed was saving you from something painful? God's delays are never random, they're strategic. So, when you find yourself in the waiting room of life, when the answers aren't coming and the silence feels endless, remember this: you are not stuck, you are being strengthened. You are not forgotten, you are being formed. Every unanswered prayer, every delay, every not yet, is shaping you into the person who will be ready to receive what you once prayed for. Faith means trusting God's timing, even when it tests your patience. It means believing that the waiting is worth it. even when you can't see why. And when the day finally comes, when the blessing arrives, you'll look back and realize that the delay wasn't denial, it was divine timing, it was love in disguise, it was God's way of saying, you weren't ready then, but now you are, so keep your heart steady, keep believing. Because one day, you'll thank God for the prayers He didn't answer right away. You'll see that His delay wasn't rejection, it was protection, preparation, and a beautiful expression of His perfect love. Pain builds purpose. These three words carry a depth that life teaches us only through experience. Every person, especially every woman, has walked through moments of pain, heartbreaks, betrayals, disappointments, or loss. Yet, when you look back, it is those very moments that shaped you the most. Pain refines you. It burns away illusions, ego, and fear, leaving behind strength, compassion, and clarity. It's not the happy days that define you, but how you rise after you've been broken. There's a saying, a diamond is just a piece of coal that handled pressure well. Pain is that pressure. It feels unbearable when you're in it, but it's forming something beautiful within you. Every tear you've shed, every night you've spent wondering, why me? Every prayer that came from a place of heartbreak, all of it is shaping your soul into something stronger. I once met a woman who had lost her husband at a young age. Her world collapsed overnight. She told me, Guruji, I don't think I'll ever be happy again. I listened quietly and said, I understand your pain, but don't let it define you. Let it transform you. Years later, that same woman started a support group for widows, helping hundreds of others find hope. She told me, my pain gave me a purpose I never expected. This is what pain does. It cracks you open, not to destroy you, but to allow light to enter. When life is smooth, we rarely stop to reflect. But pain has a strange way of slowing us down, making us look deeper and reconnecting us to what truly matters. When you go through hardship, you begin to see the world differently. You start to appreciate little things, peaceful mornings, kind gestures, simple joys. You learn to value love, empathy, and time more than anything money can buy. Pain teaches what comfort never can. Sometimes, pain doesn't come to break you, it comes to wake you. Maybe you were stuck in a job that drained your spirit, a relationship that silenced your voice, or a routine that buried your dreams. And then one day, everything fell apart. It hurt, yes. But maybe that breakdown was actually a breakthrough in disguise. God sometimes uses pain as a gentle push to move us toward where we're meant to be. Think of a seed again. To grow, it must be buried in darkness and go through the pressure of the soil. Only then does it sprout into life. If the seed could speak, it would probably cry, why am I buried? Why is it dark? But that darkness is necessary for its transformation. The same is true for you. What feels like being buried is often God planting you for something greater. We often pray for blessings, but we rarely realize that sometimes pain itself is the blessing. Pain humbles us. It strips away pride. It teaches us empathy. It reminds us that we are human and that we need others and God to carry us through. A woman who has known pain deeply becomes soft, hearted yet strong. She learns to forgive faster, to listen more, to understand without judging. She becomes a healer, not because she never suffered, but because she did and survived. There was once a woman who lost everything in a business failure. She had poured her heart, money, and years into it, and suddenly it all vanished. For months, she couldn't sleep or smile. But slowly, through her pain, she began to see what really mattered. She started again, smaller, wiser, and with more faith. Years later, her new venture grew beyond her imagination, and she said something profound. If I hadn't lost everything, I wouldn't have found myself. Pain can do that. It strips away the unnecessary and brings you back to your core. When you are in pain, it's easy to feel like God is silent. But just because He's silent doesn't mean He's absent. Sometimes silence is His way of building your strength. It's in those quiet, tearful prayers that your faith deepens. You learn to lean on God, not because you understand everything, but because you trust His purpose, even when it hurts. Pain also builds resilience. You start to realize that you've survived every single thing you thought would break you. Every time you were hurt, you didn't just recover, you grew, you became wiser, calmer, and stronger. You stopped needing validation and started seeking peace. That's what pain does. It matures the soul. Look at gold. Before it shines, it has to go through fire. The heat burns away impurities, leaving behind pure brilliance. Your pain is that fire. It doesn't come to destroy you, it comes to refine you. You cannot shine without being tested. You cannot fulfill your purpose without understanding pain. When you look at the lives of the most inspiring people, you'll see a common thread. They all turned pain into purpose. The loss became compassion. The struggle became wisdom. The heartbreak became strength. They didn't let pain make them bitter. They let it make them better. So, if you are walking through a storm right now, don't curse the rain. It's watering something deep inside you. Don't fear the pain, it's teaching you what joy really means. Don't rush the healing, growth takes time. One day, you will look back at this moment and say, if I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't have become who I am today. Remember, pain is temporary, but the purpose it builds lasts forever. Every scar tells a story of survival. Every tear plants a seed of strength. And every wound becomes a place where God's light can shine through. So trust that even in your hardest moments, something meaningful is being created within you. Because pain, when embraced with faith, doesn't destroy, it transforms. And that transformation is the very purpose your soul came here to find. Pain builds purpose. These words sound simple, but they carry a truth that every soul eventually learns through experience. Pain is not the enemy we think it is. It is the silent teacher that life sends to refine us, not to ruin us. Every woman who has walked through heartbreak, loss, or disappointment knows that pain has a way of stripping away everything unnecessary until only the truth remains. It may not feel like it when you're crying on the floor or when your heart feels too heavy to carry, but that pain is shaping you into someone you could never become without it. Imagine gold being purified in fire. The flames are intense and the heat feels unbearable, yet only through that process does gold gain its shine. Our pain is that fire. It burns, it tests, and it refines. But after the fire, you emerge stronger, wiser, and more radiant. Pain doesn't come to destroy you. It comes to awaken you to a strength you didn't know you had. I once met a young woman who had gone through a painful divorce. She felt defeated, Ashamed and lost, she told me, Guruji, I feel like my life is over. I smiled softly and said, No, my child, your life isn't over. It's just beginning. Sometimes God breaks your heart to save your soul. Months later, she began volunteering at a center for women facing similar struggles. She found healing in helping others heal. Her pain became her purpose. She once told me, I thought my pain ended my story, but now I see it was the chapter that began everything new. That's the power of pain. It transforms victims into healers, sorrow into service, endings into beginnings. When we go through suffering, our instinct is to ask, why me? But with time and faith, that question often turns into, thank you for showing me who I really am, because pain reveals your real self. When everything is easy, you don't discover your strength. It's when you're left alone, when things fall apart, when you're forced to rebuild from scratch. That's when you meet the warrior within you. Pain introduces you to the parts of yourself that comfort never could. Think about the butterfly. Before it can fly, it must first struggle inside its cocoon. If you were to help the butterfly by breaking the cocoon early, it would never develop the strength in its wings to soar. The struggle is what makes it capable of flight. Similarly, the struggles you face are strengthening your wings. Every tear you shed, every obstacle you overcome, every heartbreak you survive, these are the moments that prepare you to rise higher than before. Without pain, your wings would remain too weak to carry your purpose. There's also a woman I met who lost her job after 10 years of dedication. She felt betrayed, hurt, and afraid. For weeks, she asked, why would God let this happen? I worked so hard. I told her, sometimes God closes one door to lead you to a place you would have never dared to go. A few months later, she started her own small business. It grew slowly, but with love and honesty. One day she said, losing that job was the best thing that ever happened to me. It pushed me toward my real calling. What once felt like pain turned out to be the very force that led her to her purpose. Pain also makes you more compassionate. When you've suffered, you begin to understand others' suffering. You stop judging. You start listening. You become gentle. A woman who has been through storms learns how to calm others in theirs. She no longer speaks from opinion, she speaks from experience. Her words carry warmth because they come from a heart that's been broken and rebuilt with love. Pain also humbles us. It reminds us that we are not in control of everything. It teaches us to let go, to trust, and to rely on God's strength instead of our own. When everything is going well, it's easy to forget the divine. But when you're on your knees, praying for guidance, that's when your soul reconnects with something higher. Pain takes you closer to God because it strips away the illusion that you can handle everything alone. Sometimes, the things that hurt the most are the very things that save us. A toxic relationship ends, and though it breaks your heart, it frees your spirit. A job loss devastates you, but it leads to a path that aligns with your purpose. A betrayal cuts deep, but it teaches you discernment and self-respect. Pain doesn't always show its purpose right away, but time reveals it. Every hardship carries a hidden lesson, a hidden blessing. There's a quiet strength that grows inside a person who's been through pain and still chooses to love, to smile, to hope. That strength cannot be taught in books or sermons. It is born in the fire of lived experience. You start to realize that life is not about avoiding pain, but about transforming it. The same fire that burns wood to ashes can also forge steel. It's not about what happens to you. It's about what you become because of it. When you're in pain, you often feel like it will never end. But look back on your life. Every pain you thought you couldn't survive, you did. Every storm that felt endless eventually passed. Every wound that seemed permanent healed with time. You are proof that pain doesn't last forever, but the strength it gives you does. So when pain visits your life, don't run from it. Sit with it, learn from it, and let it shape you. Ask yourself, what is this pain trying to teach me? Maybe it's teaching you patience. Maybe it's teaching you compassion. Maybe it's showing you your purpose. You may not see it now, but someday you will look back and say, that pain was necessary. It built me. Remember, flowers grow after rain, stars shine in darkness, and people find their purpose through pain. Your suffering is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of your transformation. Pain doesn't make you weaker. It makes you real, grounded, and purposeful. It breaks you open only to let your light pour out. And that light born from pain becomes the purpose that touches the world around you. Trust the process. These three words can change the way we experience life, yet they are often the hardest to live by. When everything is uncertain, when plans collapse, and when prayers seem unanswered, these words whisper softly in the background, trust the process. Life is not a straight road. It is full of turns, detours, and delays, but every twist has meaning. Even when we cannot see it, something beautiful is unfolding behind the scenes. There's a story of a woman who was an artist. She loved painting sunsets, but one evening, as she worked on a canvas, she spilled black paint across it by accident. She felt her masterpiece was ruined. She sat there crying, thinking all her effort was wasted. Days later, instead of throwing it away, she began to paint over the dark patches, turning them into mountain shadows. When she finished, the painting looked more powerful than before. Sometimes, what feels like a mistake is just God adding depth to your story. When you trust the process, even the black paint in your life becomes part of something beautiful. We live in a world that teaches us to hurry, to chase, to control every outcome. But God doesn't rush, He prepares. The seed planted today doesn't bloom tomorrow. It must stay hidden underground, in darkness, in silence. To the world, it seems like nothing is happening, but inside, roots are growing strong. Similarly, when you're waiting and nothing seems to move, don't mistake it for stagnation. Beneath the surface, you are being strengthened, refined, and readied for the season that's coming. Growth takes time, and purpose unfolds one layer at a time. Many times life feels like a puzzle. You look at one piece, it's jagged, colorless, and confusing. You wonder where it fits. But when all the pieces finally come together, you realize that every shape, every shade had its reason. The moments that once didn't make sense become part of a larger, beautiful picture. When we try to understand life too soon, we only see fragments. But when we trust the process, those fragments slowly form meaning. I once met a young woman who had big dreams. She wanted to become a writer, but every time she submitted her work, she faced rejection. She came to me one day and said, "Guruji, maybe this isn't for me." I told her, "Don't give up just because it's hard. Diamonds take years to form under pressure. Keep trusting the process." She took that advice to heart. Years later, her work was published and touched countless lives. She said, "The waiting taught me patience, and patience gave depth to my writing." What she thought was delay was actually preparation. The process doesn't always feel peaceful. Sometimes it feels like being lost, like walking in the dark with no clear path ahead. But that's where faith grows. If you could see the destination, you wouldn't need trust. Trust means believing even when you don't understand. It's saying, "I don't know what's happening, but I believe it's taking me somewhere good." The universe, or God, whatever you call that higher power, knows what He's doing. Your job is not to control the process, but to surrender to it. There's something deeply beautiful about surrender. It's not giving up, it's giving in to the flow of life, to divine timing, to lessons you cannot yet see. Think of how a river flows. It bends around rocks, it twists through valleys. It doesn't resist the landscape, it flows with it. That's how trust works. When you stop fighting every challenge and start flowing with faith, life carries you exactly where you're meant to go. Sometimes the process takes you through people who hurt you, doors that close, or opportunities that slip away. You may not understand it at the time, but later you'll realize that those things were never meant to stay. They were lessons, not losses. The people who left made room for better ones. The opportunities that failed redirected you to your true purpose. The closed doors protected you from something that wasn't aligned with your path. When you trust the process, you see that nothing was wasted. Every experience had a role to play in shaping who you are becoming. A caterpillar must go through complete darkness before becoming a butterfly. It doesn't fight the cocoon. It trusts the transformation happening inside it. If it could speak, it might cry, "Why is everything dark? Why am I stuck?" But that darkness is its preparation. The wings are forming, strength is building. In the same way, when life feels heavy, when you feel trapped in uncertainty, know that something sacred is happening inside you. You're being transformed. The waiting isn't punishment, it's preparation. There was once a woman who lost her business. Everything she built seemed to crumble overnight. She said, "I prayed so much, but nothing worked. I don't understand." I told her, "Sometimes God removes what you built so He can rebuild it with stronger foundations." She didn't see it then, but months later she started again with new ideas, new faith, and a clearer vision. Her second business became a success, but more importantly, she found peace within herself. She later said, "If that loss hadn't happened, I would never have discovered my strength." That's the beauty of trusting the process. It turns pain into power. When you trust the process, you stop living in anxiety. You begin to realize that what is meant for you cannot pass you by. You no longer chase, you attract. You no longer beg, you believe. You no longer fear, you flow. Every delay, every detour, every difficulty is a step in the direction of your destiny. So if life feels confusing right now, take a deep breath. Don't fight the storm. Learn to dance in the rain. Don't curse the delay. Embrace the lesson. Don't doubt the plan. Trust the planner. You may not understand the process today, but one day you'll look back and realize it was perfect. Every challenge, every heartbreak, every silent season was building the person you were meant to become. Because when you trust the process, life doesn't just happen to you, it happens for you. Faith is not about everything making sense. It's about trusting even when nothing does. Life will always bring us moments when we stand at the edge of uncertainty, unsure of what lies ahead. And in those moments, faith is the bridge between our fear and God's promise. It's the gentle voice inside that whispers, "Keep going," when the world tells us to stop. Faith doesn't mean we won't face storms, it means we know who calms them. Think about a farmer who plants seeds. He cannot see what's happening beneath the soil, yet every day he waters the ground and waits. The sun rises, the rain falls, but days pass and still there's nothing visible. But does he stop believing? No, because he knows growth takes time. He trusts the process because he has faith in the unseen. In life, we must be like that farmer. Even when we don't see progress, even when everything looks the same, faith reminds us that something is growing inside the soil of our efforts. Faith is not built in comfort, it's born in the fire. When everything is smooth, we don't need much faith. But when things fall apart, when prayers seem unanswered, when doors close, when dreams crumble, that's when real faith begins to speak. Faith is not about seeing light, it's about believing in it, even when you're surrounded by darkness. It's holding on when your hands are trembling and your heart feels tired. There's a story of a woman who was struggling through one hardship after another. Her health was failing, her finances were broken, and her relationships were falling apart. One day she said, "God, I can't carry this anymore." And in the quiet of her prayer, she felt an inner voice say, "You were never meant to carry it alone." Tears streamed down her face because she realized she had been trying to control everything on her own strength. The moment she let go, things didn't instantly get better, but her heart did. That peace, that calm in the middle of chaos, that is what faith feels like. Sometimes, faith is not about asking God to change the situation. It's about asking Him to change us within the situation. When life gets tough, our natural instinct is to ask, "Why me?" But faith teaches us to ask, "What can I learn from this?" Every test carries a lesson, and every delay carries a purpose. We might not see it right away, but looking back, we always realize that God's plan was far wiser than ours. Have you ever noticed how a GPS works? You put in your destination, and it guides you step by step. But if you take a wrong turn, it doesn't give up. It says, "Recalculating." That's how faith works. You may take wrong turns, make mistakes, or face unexpected detours. But faith whispers, "Keep going. I'll guide you again." God doesn't cancel your journey because of a detour. He redirects you to still reach your destination. Faith is believing that even when your path changes, your purpose doesn't. There's a beautiful story of a bird that sat on a tree branch during a storm. The wind blew fiercely, the rain poured heavily, but the bird did not fly away. It stayed there, trusting the branch beneath it. Why? Because its faith wasn't in the branch, it was in its wings. In life, we must develop that same kind of faith. Don't put your trust in circumstances, people, or situations. They may change. Have faith in your inner strength and in the divine power guiding you. Even if the branch breaks, your wings will help you rise again. Faith is not a feeling, it's a choice. There will be days when you feel discouraged, when nothing goes right, and when doubt whispers louder than hope. But faith is choosing to believe even then. It's choosing to smile when you want to cry, to pray when you feel tired, and to keep walking when the road seems endless. Faith says, I may not understand what's happening, but I trust that it's leading me somewhere meaningful. There was once a young girl who dreamed of becoming a doctor. She worked hard, but she failed her entrance exam twice. Her friends moved ahead, and she felt left behind. One day she came to me and said, Guruji, maybe this is not my destiny. I told her, faith doesn't mean everything will happen when you want. It means you believe it will happen when it's meant to. She tried again the following year, and she passed. Years later, she said, those failures taught me perseverance, and that perseverance made me a better doctor. Sometimes, faith delays success to strengthen your spirit first. Faith also means trusting that rejection is protection. Sometimes God says, no, not because you don't deserve something, but because He's preparing something greater. You might not get what you prayed for, but you will always get what's best for you. When a door closes, faith reminds us to stop banging on it and to look around, because somewhere another door is opening. It's not always easy to believe that, but every closed door carries a message. This was not your path. Faith turns worry into worship. Instead of asking, what if things go wrong? Faith asks, what if things go right? It changes fear into fuel, doubt into determination, and pain into purpose. The more you feed your faith, the smaller your fear becomes. It's not about ignoring your problems. It's about believing that no problem is bigger than God's plan for you. In our daily lives, faith is tested in small ways too. When you're waiting for a job call, when you're uncertain about a relationship, when you're hoping for healing, those moments are silent tests of trust. Faith doesn't always shout, sometimes it simply whispers, hold on a little longer, because the truth is, breakthroughs often come right after we feel like giving up. The night is always darkest just before dawn. So, when life feels heavy and your path unclear, take a deep breath, close your eyes and say, I trust. You may not know how things will work out, but you'll know they will. Because faith doesn't promise you a life without storms. It promises you that you never face them alone, and when you look back, you'll realize that the times you thought you were falling apart were the moments God was actually holding you together. That is the beauty of faith. It doesn't change the world around you immediately, but it changes the world within you. And once your inner world is at peace, everything else starts to fall into place. Dear God, I don't know what tomorrow holds, but I trust you because you've never failed me before, and you won't fail me now.